Coming up.
Do you share the concerns of many Canadians who are worried about Justin Trudeau's censorship agenda and Bill C-11 and C-18?
I would add to that list, Bill, criminalize violence, put people who commit violent acts.
No, but my question is, do you believe that there is a correlation between incitement and hate speech and people's responses, or do you think that people act independent of those two things?
When it comes to Bill C-11, do you see it in conflict with the basic freedoms that Canadians are guaranteed in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms?
We believe in very broad protections for freedom of expression.
Should I be able to describe black people using the N-word?
The committee shall commence and study on the protection of freedom of expression.
And Ms. Van Guyen, I'd like to speak with you in particular about Justin Trudeau's censorship agenda, which has been implemented by the Liberal Party, certainly with help from the NDP. And when we talk about the censorship agenda, we're talking about primarily two pieces of legislation, Bill C-11 and C-18. Ms. Van Guyen, I'm sure you're familiar with them, but just for the sake of being on the same page, Bill C-11, of course, refers to the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, and the federal bureaucracy gaining more control over what Canadians can access on streaming platforms online. Bill C-18, of course, refers to Justin Trudeau and the federal bureaucracy having more control over the news that Canadians can see, which is limited access that Canadians have to news on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. So I'd like to start with just asking Ms. Van Guyen, do you share the concerns of many Canadians who are worried about Justin Trudeau's censorship agenda and Bill C-11 and C-18?
I would add to that list Bill C-63, which has the potential to be one of the most censorious pieces of legislation that I've seen in a really long time. C-63, the Online Harms Act, would increase penalties for criminalized speech and hate-motivated crimes to life in prison, which part of the concern around that is using these heightened penalties to overcharge criminal defendants and create pressure for plea deals for lower level offenses when there is an argument that the Crown might make that there is a hate element. Even if it's not present, it can be charged, and this overcharging leads to pressure to plead out. Another concern we have about C-63 is that it would allow for someone who fears a future hate crime speech, that they can request a judge to put conditions on the would-be speaker, things like an ankle monitor or even imprisonment. And this is for future speech that has not yet taken place. This is incredibly chilling. C-63 would also create a civil mechanism for people to complain about speech to the Human Rights Commission. It's a return of Section 13 of the Canada Human Rights Act, which was rightly repealed for dragging before the Commission journalists and members of the clergy. There is no cost to bringing a complaint, but there's great cost to the complained about. And we have seen human rights tribunals bring before them comedians. That's in a Quebec context. So giving this power to these commissions will chill expression. I did not have time in my 5 minutes to mention C-63, and I understand that there is a separate committee hearing that will address that, but I wanted to put on the record our serious concern about that. With respect to the Online News Act and the Online Streaming Act, while perhaps not censorship in the most classic form, I do share the concerns of millions of Canadians who have lost access to news as a result of the Online News Act. I share the concerns of a lot of academics and Canadian content creators about the regulation of user-generated content on social media platforms like YouTube. I'm a YouTube creator myself. I have one of the largest, I think probably the largest YouTube channel about Canadian constitutional law, perhaps niche.
If I could just ask
and it will censor that.
Ms. Van Guyen, if I could just ask a follow-up to that, because The Trudeau Liberals very much like to misrepresent their censorship agenda as being solely focused on big corporations. But as you noted, it does include...
Mr. Chair. Well, I do want to hear Mr. Giovanni's question. He's making an assertion as to what our intention is, which I think is you have ruled before.
Well, you didn't let me finish the question, so you're getting ahead of yourself.
Didn't even need to get there.
I know you're an eager guy. I know you're an eager guy. So if I could just ask the question to Ms. Van Geyn, you mentioned that user-generated content is included in Justin Trudeau's censorship agenda, which law professor Michael Geist has detailed in a series of blogs explaining that it is not just a matter of focusing on corporations. What is the importance of this censorship agenda, including user-generated content?
A short answer of 20 seconds, please.
The effect is that it puts the government putting its thumb on the scale of what content Canadians see, and that in itself is inherently censorious.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are for, I want to start by, first of all, thanking all of the witnesses for being here. And I'd like to start by asking Ms. Van Geyn, did I get your name correctly? Because people get my name wrong all the time. I must make sure I get it right. Is it Van Geyn or Van Geyn?
Share your issue. It's Van Geyn. Like
Van Geyn. Perfect. Thank you. I just want to, if you could just take a moment to clarify for me something that I want to make sure I heard correctly. When you were talking about Bill C-63, did you say that we were too tough, the law was too tough on hate speech?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think that the issue is with statutizing the definition, which is an inherently subjective definition. I think that there's an issue with the ability to add a new penalty when there's another offense committed to basically overcharge defendants.
Got it. Okay, so
I can give
so
you.
no, that's fine. So I guess what I want to dig into is what would you say to members of the Jewish community or the Muslim community who right now who are seeing incredible spikes in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that is resulting in violent physical assaults on people and institutions? The argument many of them make is that hate speech leads to these things, these types of actions. Would you agree with that?
So violence is, of course, criminalized already, and I think that there's an issue with all kinds of things like bail conditions that repeat violent offenders are not actually put in prison. So please criminalize violence. Put people who commit violent acts.
No, but my question is, do you believe that there is a correlation between incitement and hate speech and people's responses, or do you think that people act independent of those two things?
So incitement to violence is also criminalized, and
Okay.
we take no issue with incitement to violence.
Okay. So let's just, I appreciate very much you speaking about the importance of freedom. Do you believe in freedom of expression as being beyond just words?
Of course.
Okay. So do you think that a woman should be able to wear a niqab?
Of course I do.
Do you think that it was inappropriate for the Conservative government to put forward, in the last time that Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, do you think it was inappropriate for them to put forward a niqab ban on women?
I don't have comment on that. I'm not familiar.
No, but I'm not asking you. So, okay. So you're not familiar with the proposed niqab ban?
I do not think that government should ban religious clothing.
Okay. So you just to confirm, you do not think that government should ever ban religious clothing, correct?
I do not think they should.
Okay.
Including the Quebec government is doing that now.
Do you believe in a woman's right to choose?
Of course I do.
Do you think that is it
to choose how to access healthcare? You mean like to choose
whether or not she can get an abortion?
Yes, that's my personal viewpoint.
Fantastic.
I do believe
does it concern you? Does it concern you that conservative governments in certain provinces, and does it concern you that members of the Conservative Party are seeking to legislate eliminating or taking away a woman's right to choose?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I'm asking you specifically if a conservative.
We're talking about abortion right now.
I'm asking you that because I'm asking you if you believe in that freedom.
What the connection is.
I'm asking you if you
Mr.
believe
Speaker,
in
point
that
of order
freedom.
here. What's the relevance to this?
Point of order.
Expression. Freedom of expression. Expression takes different forms. Well, I've asked the question, and as you well know,
But you're pounding her now. That's the point.
Oh, now you're concerned. Okay, great. Okay, let's.
I don't feel hounded. I just don't understand.
Okay, let me ask the question differently.
I believe people have the right to express their views on abortion.
Okay. Do you believe that people have the right to legislate whether or not a woman has the right to choose?
I mean, now you're talking about sort of parliamentary sovereignty issues, which are well beyond the scope of, Parliament can legislate on all kinds of things, and then they're put in check by the Supreme Court. I really don't
So
legislation as, like, Parliament is sovereign.
So if Parliament decided, so if Parliament decided to do certain things and pass certain laws, then that would be sovereign. And that would be the law, and that's what we should all adhere to, and there should be no opposition. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm a little confused by the line of questioning. Parliament can legislate. Legislation is subject to our Constitution, which can then be reviewed by the court.
So we can get more into this later. Are you concerned, or were you concerned when the former premier of New Brunswick, who has recently transitioned into being the former premier, and Premier Moe in Nova Scotia, are trying to put restrictions on a child's right to use the pronouns that they want to use?
That's an issue that we haven't taken a position on at the CCF.
I'm asking you your opinion, though. I'm asking you your opinion.
I'm here speaking as a representative of an organization. I'm not going to give you my opinion on that particular issue, which is a live issue.
Okay, and my final question to you.
You're at 5:10.
Canadians can judge for themselves. Ms. Van Geyn, when it comes to Bill C-11, do you see it in conflict with the basic freedoms that Canadians are guaranteed in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms?
I do. I do have issues with C-11. In particular, the ability of the CRTC to regulate user-generated content. That, I think, is the biggest concern. The analogy that a lot of us who are online content creators, Canadians, have given is if a bookstore is ordered by the government to put certain books in the window and certain books at the back, would we view that as a censorious government act? And that is the analogy that a lot of us in that ecosystem have been using related to what the C-11 CRTC power to put its thumb on the algorithm is doing.
If I could, just because time is so short, it's been described largely as backdoor censorship. The Justin Trudeau and the Liberal censorship agenda. They're not telling people that they can't believe something, but they're restricting through technological means, algorithms, the content that's available. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that you could describe it as backdoor censorship. It's not censorship in the classic form, but it's a big problem.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And now I'm curious about C-18. Again, do you see C-18 as being in conflict with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the freedoms guaranteed for Canadians in it?
So it kind of depends on how the regulations are going to be interpreted with respect to the Online News Act. I think that it's not censorship in the classic form that we think of, but depending on how it's operationalized, there could be a charter case to be made against that particular piece of legislation.
Did you find it deeply problematic, or did you find it problematic that that as a result of C-18, news content basically on some of the most used social media apps in the country was eliminated, restricting Canadians' ability to see what was happening in the world?
Yes. I mean, this was in direct response to government action. Meta took the action of blocking news on Canadian versions of their platforms, including Facebook and Instagram, and millions of Canadians were accessing news that way. It actually undermines the ability of the free press to function because of the loss of clicks, which is how some of their revenue was being generated. Sharing news is not a threat to the news industry.
So we have Bill C-11, Bill C-18. I know you mentioned as well Bill C-63. Direct threats to Canadians and the freedoms that Canadians are guaranteed through the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That certainly seems like a censorship agenda to me that needs to be fought against. Thank you very much to the witnesses for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Couric. The final 4 minutes, we welcome Ms. Shanahan, Liberal Party. Go ahead.
Well, and normally I'd be very happy to be asking my questions, but Mr. Noor Mohammed was on such a roll, I am ceding my time to him.
Okay, he's got less than 4 minutes, about 3:50 now, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go, Ms. Van Geyn, you and I were having a conversation, so I'd like to go back to that if we could. Are there limits? Should there be limits to freedom of speech?
I mean, we're a civil liberties organization, so we believe in very broad protections for freedom of expression.
Should I be able to describe black people using the N-word?
I don't think that you should describe black people using the
But should I be allowed to?
I don't. The current law permits you to do that.
And, okay.
That's a statement of the law. That is a statement of the law right now.
But do you consider that hate speech?
I would never talk that way, and I don't think you would either.
I certainly would not. I certainly would not. My question to you, though, is if we have very broad limits to what people can say or not say, do we not start to see that there becomes risk to other people's safety and security? So, for example, if somebody were to say that, oh, all Muslims are terrorists and we need to worry about them, or all Jews support genocide, we should be worried about that, or all Chinese people are complicit with the CCP, or making nonsense statements like that, which can start to undermine people's safety and security, do you think that we should limit that, or do you think that's okay?
That's not limited currently under the law, even under hate speech law. The current hate speech law would not prohibit statements like that, as odious as they are.
But that's actually not true, though. But that's simply untrue.
No, it's not untrue.
It's not. So okay. So just to go back. So we will disagree.
It would be incitement.
Okay. So incitement.
Which is a much higher threshold than what you're describing. As terrible as the speech that you're describing is. And it should be permitted. Your position is that should be permitted. That's not even.
No, but my question to you: should it be permitted?
Government is proposing doing.
My question to you is: should that type of speech be permitted? Is it okay to say those things?
It is not okay to say those things, but it is legal to say those things in Canada.
Okay, let's move on to a topic we didn't get to because I only have a couple minutes left. One of the challenges that we have seen recently is to how it is that gender-affirming care and kids and young people and others that are not children are seeing when it comes to their rights and their freedom of expression. Do you agree or disagree with conservative politicians that continue to push rhetoric and limit freedom of expression for trans people?
So what are you asking me? Should politicians be able to make statements on what type of medical care or should
politicians be able to regulate what type of medical care or what type of freedom people have to express their identity?
That's not a freedom of expression. That's not a 2P issue.
So it's not. So freedom of expression, when it comes to trans rights, are excluded. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying.
So my question to you is: should politicians be in a position to regulate the freedom of trans people or the LGBTQ2S community from expressing who they are and seeking care and treatment to be able to be who they wish to be or who they are?
Is that happening? Can you give me the example?
Yeah, there have been positions in the Conservative Party, including at their last convention, to seek to ban children from accessing gender-affirming care. Do you agree or disagree with that?
So I maintain that is not an expression issue. That would be, depending on what you mean by gender-affirming care, there's a broad spectrum of what that could include. It could include surgery. It could include pronoun use. It could include pharmaceutical interventions. And
thank you very much, Ms.
Surgery is not a freedom of expression issue. There could be a Section 15 claim in
yeah.
this.
Thank you very much.
Being litigated.
Yeah, we're at the 4-minute plus.